This is the Sony ZV-1, a great compact point and shoot camera from Sony, but there's a few reasons why it's not the camera for me and it might not be the camera for you. Hey, my name's Jake and I create content here for solo creators on the go, people like me who are on the go creating content pretty much by themselves. So I do reviews of equipment that makes that process easier and tips and tutorials on how to use that equipment. I spent the last couple of weeks traveling around and I thought, what a perfect opportunity to try out the Sony ZV-1. Now, I'm not able to show you a lot of that footage because I'm still under NDA for some of it. So I'll show you what I can, but also I'm out traveling around in Independence Mine in Hatcher's Pass, Alaska today. I thought this would be a great place to come and just kind of explore, test some of the photo capabilities, test some of the video capabilities. It's kind of a weird, moody, cloudy day, but that can be pretty cool, I think, in some cases. Let's jump into what makes the Sony ZV-1 a really great camera and why I probably won't be getting one, at least not yet. These are the things that I like about the Sony ZV-1. It's a great little point and shoot camera that you can throw in a pocket, you can keep with you basically all the time. It has a pretty good zoom range. The 24 millimeters is maybe a tiny bit tight for vlogging, but it does work, especially if you get a small tripod or a gorilla pod or something like that to push it out just a little further, unless you're like me and you've got, you know, pretty long arms. The photo quality I found is pretty good. Obviously, it doesn't perform as well in low light as like an APS-C camera or a full frame camera would, but for overall sharpness and overall quality of photos, I found them to be really nice, especially if you shoot in RAW. It gives you plenty of detail and plenty of stuff to work with in post. And the fact that there's an ND filter built in so that you can drag the shutter like I'm doing with the time lapse now is fantastic because you don't have to carry anything else with you. So it really is a nice all-in-one camera that's built basically to be able to do most of the things you need to do out of the box without a lot of other accessories. Something else I do really like about the Sony ZV-1 is the fact that it has the built-in intervalometer. You can do time lapses and stuff like that. I've got it shooting a time lapse over here right now. It's the time lapse you saw during the beginning of the video. And the time lapse you're seeing right now. But it's not like a lot of point and shoot cameras where when you use the time lapse setting or the intervalometer setting, it will compile the time lapse for you. This is based on you taking all the images into a program, Lightroom, whatever, and then creating a time lapse after you edit those photos in your favorite editing program. It can shoot 4K 24 and 4K 30. It's only 8-bit and 420, but it does work well and it does give you some nice images. Maybe not quite as sharp as like an APS-C or the A64, A6600 or the A7 III, but definitely usable 4K footage. If you're shooting stuff primarily for YouTube and social media, this would work fine, absolutely, more than enough. For the slow motion, when you're shooting HD 120, it's pretty nice. It's about the same as the other cameras that Sony has on the market right now. And it is nice that they included the really high frame rate settings, so you can go up to like 240, 480, 960. Now, I don't think that 480 is very usable. It's okay, but it gets pretty soft. And then 960, in my opinion, is just not usable at all because it's extremely soft. But the 240 in 1080 is actually, it's nice. And as you can see in these examples here, it makes a big difference to go from 120 to 240. The amount of slow motion you get, or the slowdown in the motion you get, is really nice. The nice thing about shooting in the 120 is you can shoot in 120 and still get audio. So if you like to have audio with your stuff when you're like speed ramping B-roll or something like that, that's nice to be able to shoot in. Obviously, when you're shooting in the 240 or the 480 or the 960, you don't get audio there because you have to use Sony's high frame rate settings and then decide what type of timeline you want to output those files to. 24 frames a second timeline, which is what I use because I'm civilized, or a 30 frame per second timeline if you're one of those people that shoots 30 frames per second. The active stabilization is great. It does crop in a little bit more, so I'm using a Manfrotto Pixie tripod to just give me a little bit of extra reach, but it does work really well. This is what you're seeing right now. Now I've switched to the standard stabilization, which is still decent, but definitely not anywhere close to as good as the active stabilization was. Or if you're doing things like this, or you're hand holding, the active stabilization is really good. It really makes a big difference. You don't really even need to use a gimbal with this camera if you can hold it relatively stable. Now, if you're running or you're really moving fast, that's going to be a little bit of a different issue. But for just walking around and filming, or for hand holding while you're filming things, it works really well. This new little microphone system here does great in a pinch. It's not the best audio, definitely not as good as something like the DD3 Pro or the Rode Wireless Go plugged on there. But the fact that they include this little windscreen, and the windscreen actually does a pretty decent job, as you can see here. Little point and shoot, like for B-roll or whatever else. That could be extra stuff. So this is a good test of the onboard mics with their kind of normal noise cancellation. So you got a big stream back there. Let's see how focused it makes me on the voice here. And I'm gonna put the Rode Video Micro on to see how much better or worse that is. So this is with the Rode Video Micro. There's the stream, and it should go away as I go like this because that's rejecting most of the sound from behind. Of course, I love the flip out screen. That is fantastic for being able to frame shots, especially if you're filming yourself, or even just shots in odd locations where you can't really bend around or see the camera screen normally when it's just the tilt out screen. The flip out screen is really nice. It's odd to me that they put the ports on the opposite side. It makes sense, I guess, but to me they're on the wrong side of the camera because every other camera I have has them on the opposite side. But it makes sense that they don't cover up the screen when you flip it around. And I do like the fact that they have each port, the USB port, the HDMI port, and the microphone in jack, each have their own individual door, so you don't have to have them all open or all shut. I really like that. Another thing Sony did really well with this camera is the fact that you get 3 memory slots, which basically means you can set the camera up for pretty much anything you need to shoot with and just be able to flip through your memory slots. So I have memory slot 1 set up as 4K 24, my main shooting mode. Memory slot 2 is set up as HD 120, so high def shooting in 120 frames a second for slow motion. And then memory slot 3 is set up for photo. And the fact that you can just quickly switch between them and go back and forth is really nice. Even though you don't have the custom buttons, even though you don't have the memory slot dial on the top, it makes it being able to get around really fast. And the fact that there is a custom button up on top that you can program to pretty much whatever you want is also really handy. I found myself programming it to the ND filter so I could turn the ND on and off a lot. But it's nice to have that background defocus programmed up there too, just when you want that little bit of extra separation from the background. It's nice. Now I wish they could have included, if they had one more custom button up there, it would have been fantastic, because then you wouldn't have had to choose between, say, 2 of your most used functions. But even with that said, the access to the function menu is quick and easy, and you've got a lot of space that you can put some of the things that you regularly access there. Now let's talk about a couple of things that I don't like so much. One, the battery life. It's pretty short, and you will need to have several, if not like 3 or 4 batteries with you to really be able to shoot with this on an all-day sort of thing. You can power it off USB indefinitely, but it's not really a pocketable run-around camera when you're powering it off USB if you've got a big USB power brick with you. The other thing that I really don't like, and that's pretty much the deal breaker for me, is there's no real good weather sealing on the camera. So the way I shoot, the environment that I shoot in, I have to have weather sealing to be able to protect my gear in some sort. Even if I take other precautions to protect my gear, weather sealing is a must, because weather changes rapidly and stuff happens. So that's one of the main reasons I'm not going to be getting it. Another thing that really bothers me is the placement of the quarter 20, because I use quick release plates. Most people probably use quick release plates, or even when I'm not using a quick release plate, I'm using something like the Manfrotto Pixie with a camera like this, just to give myself a little bit more reach and a good firm grasp of the camera. The fact that you have to take that off every single time you want to change a battery or take the SD card out to be able to pull your files off is really annoying. And I don't understand why Sony couldn't have just slid that over a little further so that you could have access to the battery door without having to take it off and put it back on every single time. And the fact that you do have to change the battery fairly frequently if you're running off batteries, because they drain low pretty quick, especially if you're running like the monitor brightness on high or anything like that, really makes that hard to use in a fast-paced running gun situation. Really, at $750 to $800, depending on where you find the pricing, if you're going to go buy it, it's not that it's a bad value. It's just, I think for a couple of $100 more, when you buy the A6400 with a kit lens for about $1,000, you're getting way more value for your money and way more capability for just a little bit more money, really. You get a better lens, you get a much better sensor for low light stuff, and you get a much more capable camera. So I think really, like, if the price of the ZV-1 came down a little bit, maybe to around $600, then it would be a great camera to grab. Now, if you don't have the extra cash for an A6400, I still think it's a great camera, provided you're shooting the way you shoot and the environment that you shoot in is okay and you're not running around the wilderness like I do regularly here in Alaska. Then it's a great camera for that. It's a great point and shoot camera. It's really good, really fast, really responsive to most shooting situations, and will capture great photos and great video in most cases until you get into really low light situations or some of the really harsh environmental situations. I put together a short playlist right there of other equipment that is fantastic for solo creators. Click or tap there. I'll see you in one of those videos. As always, if you have questions, ask me in the comments below or join my live stream Wednesday nights, 4 p.m. Alaska time, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you again soon in the next video. Cheers.